Hi, this is Roger. Thanks for dropping by. Welcome to part 2 of the start of season updates, which is based on the reverse of everything I've ever done before, because I get the plants down, water them, and then film them as I put them back. That leaves the watering out. That's the theory anyway. I'm not going to point the camera. I'm in a little bit of a hurry because I've had to turn the kit off to film. And it's gone up to 27 degrees. That's a rise of 3 degrees in about 4 minutes flat. So I need to get the kit back on. So I'm doing this top shelf here as a section. Depending on how long the video is, I may then continue there and do that top shelf. My idea is to go across the top here today, but I'll have to do it in sections. Obviously, I've only got so much room. And the way this works, if those of you that have a look on the Facebook group, I shared a picture of some unknown person, I forget where I got it from, but he was stood holding Dendrobium chrysotoxum, a large plant in full bloom. And when I first got mine off of Lynn, a lot of people said that's not chrysotoxum. Chrysotoxum's a medium to small plant, that one's far too big, it's not chrysotoxum. So I put that one up there to show that it can grow big. Followed by me adopting exactly the same position with mine. It's a large plant. The difference is mine's not in bloom yet, but as you can see from all the buds, it will be soon. I'm not going to attempt to count how many blooms it will be, but 2, 4, 6, 8, about an average of about a dozen a spike, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 or 9 spikes. So a lot of blooms coming soon, but it is a large plant and it is chrysotoxum. And it's also, I've just noticed, coming into growth at the base. Yay! Good stuff. So let's get that one out of the way. Wherever it is, it's in the way. I can't help it, but I like the blooms and the shape of the plant enough to allow that amount of space for one plant. And it sort of lives on the back of this shelf very carefully, especially putting it back up, bashing around my anosmum blooms. Right, and then it has to be twisted into a certain position so that none of the buds are up against the glass. It is fiddly and it's a faff, but it's worth it. And then that sort of lives in the centre of that shelf, and all around it go smaller oncidium types that are not in bloom. They're not doing anything, so I don't need to see them that often. Things like this, my little yellow twinkle. Decimated last year due to rot. A couple of bits broke off when I repotted it. They went on a mount, which we saw in bloom not that long ago. This did bloom. This is just coming back into growth now. It's not a happy plant, but I'm hoping it's going to recover nicely. So that just lives around the back there, where it gets reasonable light, but with the double layer of shade netting this year, not too much. Otherwise I should get told off again, won't I? This is the Oncidium sweet sugar that's now called something else. It's still sweet sugar, but it's not Oncidium. And this wasn't long in bloom. This has done exactly what I expect Oncidiums to do. The spike gets cut off, short break, followed by new growth. And that new growth will be followed by new roots. And as it starts new roots under a new growth, it kicks out new growth in the older part of the root system. Yeah, so it just pushes it back into growth. So that's that one. There's more of these little ones. Now this one came from Lynn. She has a habit of doing this. She just walks up to you at a meeting and goes, "You grow Miltonias, don't you? Have that." Oh, okay. Not sure I wanted it, but nonetheless it's a primary cross. Miltonia, it's Candidax, I think that says, cross with Binotti. And I remember when I looked this up, Binotti is a primary cross that naturally occurs in the wild, which is a cross between Candidax again and Regnellii, I think it is. So all in all, 3 species involved with that. So and this is the new growth on it, pushing on nicely, and the roots are coming out the bottom of the pot that's inside the black pot. So it's growing on quite nicely now. Good stuff. Pleased with that little one. Nice to see some flowers on that, maybe on that latest growth. We've then got my one that always looks a mess, Gilded Tower Mystic Maze. Yeah, Gilded Tower Mystic Maze. New growths on this. This one's maturing, nowhere near the size it should be, but nonetheless this has nearly died several times and it's coming back into growth now. So a maturing pseudo bulb probably won't bloom. And then another one pushing on here and another new growth here. So 3 new growths pushing on and an associated root system. So recovering quite nicely. And we've got my little Neophonetia. It's the only one I've got nowadays. I'm not going to attempt to try and pronounce what it is, but I'll be doing pop-ups for the names anyway. This one's still got a few scale, and the fact that they appear halfway up a leaf, there must be some live ones there, because I'm sure that one wasn't there last time. Not a very pretty looking plant at the moment, but it's just coming back into growth. It's just got some new fans starting down in the centre there. So, and that's usually followed by a flush of root growth. So coming back into growth very slowly though, but nonetheless it is. It did actually bloom last year with 1 spike. Should tell it off and say not good enough, you need more. Now this is my very tatty looking Nellie Isla, the red velvet one. And why it's tatty is this pseudo bulb here. Oh sorry, there's a camera. It got chewed by slugs very badly and I thought I'd lost the whole plant. But it managed to just about grow on, and it's just down there starting a new growth. Yeah, so we let it bloom a little bit reluctantly, but nonetheless it's got some reasonable roots on it, so it's growing okay. So it was allowed to bloom. Right, so where are we now? This is the Dendrobium phalaenopsis type Thai Angel that I like the blooms of a lot. Nice strong new growth on this. The plant was split in 2. The other piece is in a totally different part of the grow room, so we'll come across that in another update sometime. But very poor roots on this bit, hardly any in fact. But with a strong new growth like that we will get the roots now. So recovering quite nicely, and it's kept the green on its leaves despite being rootless for a while. So coming back. That one would have been better if it didn't go down in the first place, but I think that was left in the pot too long. Guilty. And then we've got this Nobly type that's still got no buds on it, and I don't think it's going to have any buds now, unless it does a strange out of season function, which it might do. This is Sweet Pinky Momoko, bought in the middle of summer last year in full bloom. And what I am pleased about, because I didn't expect it, the damaged new growth from last year is the first one to push out a new growth at the base. Yeah, so it is starting to grow at the base, and we've got swellings in other places as well. So just coming back into growth at the base, that one. The 2 strong new canes that I grew on last year may bloom this year. They may wait till after the winter. Unknown. We shall wait and see. It either will bloom this year or it won't. There's not a lot I can do about it either way. It'll make its own mind up. So every time I put a plant down over here and knock one off the rack. Ugh. Do you know what that is? It's a plant that is now getting so annoying. If it wasn't for its blooms, I'd snap it over my knee and throw it in the dustbin. It's the Glomeratum. And with those long leafless canes that are rigid, wherever it is, it hooks on things and knocks things off of racks, knocks bud spikes. I've borderline been throwing that out so many times because it just makes me cross. It's got no give in it. The canes are absolutely rigid. I'm seriously thinking of cutting those old canes off, which will be like starting the plant again. Right, Oncidium sotoanum. Got left to dry out badly last year. Nearly lost it. That's just my own, lack of care, basically. I did not realise it was using up the water so fast, and it was such a mass blooming, it just drained the plant, combination of the two. Mass blooming, yes, providing you keep it fed and watered well. But it's coming back into growth. We've got some new growths down here coming out from the base. I can see 1, 2, 3 so far, which is not that many, but it's 3 more than I expected. So coming back, that one. I never expected it to disappear completely and die. It's too much vigour in the plant for that to happen. And then this one is the Oncidium, actually I think it's an Aliciara. We have a tag. Yeah, Aliciara Tahitian Dancer that bloomed very well last year on the set of new growths that behaved themselves very nicely and all pushed out on one side of the plant, leaving the older part behind, all of which bloomed. And now it's doing it again. All the new growths are coming out in this area. So we've got a set of new growths coming out along the front, and it was deliberately potted in such a way that there was room for those new growths. I love it when a plan comes together. It doesn't always work like that. Sometimes they do their own thing, push out new growths in silly places. Right, that's stage 1. I'll offload that, see how big it is, and I need to get the kit back on and get it back to normal before I can turn it off again, and then I'll come back later and do another bit. Okay, next section is the bit down the centre, or some of it, not all of it. The stuff down at floor level I'm going to do separately. That's not getting watered today anyway. My Decer lives there, or Decers. There are several plants in there, but this is not a happy bunny, and I've looked back, and although these like acidic soil, they're not going to like sour soil. This ought to have been repotted in the autumn on reflection. It's too late in the year to do it now. It's going to have to wait until the autumn. That might mean I'm not going to end up with many of these little plants left. But we have got a bloom spike coming, so we're going to get some blooms on this one. The fact that that plant's strong enough to bloom, it should also produce some plantlets alongside this one, which is, that one's attached. So as long as we've got 2 or 3 plantlets by the end of the year, I've got enough to get a new potful going for next year. So not lost, but we will have some blooms. Right, and then there's an assortment of things on that shelf. This is an unknown until it blooms. It's just matured this growth here, which is plenty big enough to bloom, but it's not showing any spike yet. That may still bloom. And then it's got another growth coming up on this side, and again, the small pot syndrome, absolute pot full of roots. So an unknown until it blooms, and I haven't got a clue. It's probably one of the Miltonias. Could even be Peter Comp, I don't know. This one, however, has got a tag on it, and this is a Miltonia Summer Glory that's in a slightly larger pot, but nonetheless did the roots thing. Got 2 new growths pushing on nice and strong. This one is just coming into active root growth, which we'll get down in the pot. This one has got a few nubbins at the base, so it's just starting its root growth. But a good pot full of roots and 2 strong new growths. So I would say 2 spikes to come. Not too long. Highly likely anyway. And then, what's this object? Oh, this is my Dendrochilum. This is to go. I'm not keeping this. I mean, it's got a pot full of roots. Doesn't seem to be growing any new growths or anything at the moment. It just doesn't appeal to me, so it's going to go, but obviously at a point where I'm allowed out to actually get it to go. And then this is my Coelogene nitida, or nitida. And the 2 little things that I wasn't quite sure what they were, well, now it's obvious what it is. It's a flower spike. You can see the separate elements which will be the buds. And if that one is, then so is this one round here. So we've got 2 nice strong flower spikes pushing up on that. Beautiful blooms on this one, and highly fragrant. So they weren't new growth after all. They were bloom spikes. Goody! Right. That's that little shelf done. Right, as I said, I need to do it in sections because I've got things to do in between, including turning the kit back on just to get it back up again, get the humidity up and everything. And then I'm going to do the shelf that's behind me, the top shelf there. And I mean, that's only 2, 4, 6, there's only 8 plants, and that will make a nice section for an update, and we'll move on to something else afterwards. So I'll be back in a bit. Okay, last section for today, which is the far top shelf. So that was this top shelf left, centre top shelf left, and far top shelf left. So all left today. So this is the left of the politics world. We'll do the right of the politics world another time. Right, the first one that's going to go back up there might involve a bit of cutting because of the, just literally this hanging shelf is in the way of this one plant. But then the hanging shelf holds 7 plants. Who wins the contest? So there's a battle, basically. But the big brassica, which is down on the floor and weighs a ton, I'll have to ease this up into view. The spikes are obviously extending beyond the canes now, and they are starting to look as though buds are going to form soon. And the tips of the spikes all look at roughly the same stage, so I think they are all going to be out together. The plant itself is doing wonderfully, and something I noticed today that I did not expect is it's actually coming into growth. These are going to be difficult to see, and this is difficult to hold up, but this bulb here has a new growth at the base of it. This one has a new growth underneath the spike. So those 2 bulbs have new growths coming. Oh, this is difficult. This bulb here has a spike, and at the base of the spike is a new growth. I don't know whether you can see all this. I expect there's leaves in the way. And the one that's most advanced is this one round here, which has decided to push its new growth out the other side to where the spike is. So there's 4 or 5 new growths on this, which weren't there last time, because they do show up because they're bright light green. So anyway, this is going to be quite a spectacle. But now to get it back where it goes is not easy, because it has to tip over sideways so that I don't break the spikes on that rack. And it gets caught on everything on the way. And as I say, getting it down there was language. Trying to put it back, I'll try and keep my mouth shut. There might be ladies present. It just has to be eased in gently. Watching the spikes at all times to make sure they don't catch on anything. Tipped in sideways, bashing everything on the way until I can stand it upright. And once I can get it upright, it's sort of okay. Just about. Catch all the telumnias on the way, all the hanging plants, and then it has to be turned so that the spikes don't touch the glass. Because I'm sure that wouldn't do them any good at all. And the best place for it is, it is getting almost impossible to handle, because this spike now is actually caught in this flipping Africana thing, which is, that's going to have to go somewhere else. That is always in the way. So that's going to get moved. I'm fed up with that getting caught on everything. And quite honestly, these spikes are more important than that, because they exist. That thing is just about starting a new growth, and that's all it's doing, and it hasn't done anything since I got it. So about there. Oh, God, it's hard work for one plant. These blooms better be worth it. Right, that's that one. It's hot in here. Without any language. Right, this is the other brassica that I bought at the same time at Burnham's at their 70th anniversary do. This one's grown 2 lovely strong new growths. The roots are coming out strongly from this one. The new ones are just starting on this one. So I'm not looking at the camera. But whether there's new roots growing on those growths or not doesn't really matter with a root growth like that in the pot. So very strong root system on this. 2 good strong new growths, 2 spikes down the line. Possibly more, but I suspect only 2. So that's that one. That goes up there. Now, this is like a jigsaw puzzle. They all have their place. Right, what else we got? We have one here with no label. Tag. Let me have a look and see what I'm doing here. Right, so it's process of elimination. I know what that is, so this is what's left. This is my Shelob Tolkien, which was not happy at Malvern last year. It came back in a bit of a sorry state and stalled. But since then it's pushed up two nice new growths that are pushing on quite strongly, and they are just coming into root growth. It's got quite a good root system anyway, but obviously each new growth updates that root system and progresses it, providing the old ones don't die because you leave it in the pot too long. That's the conundrum you get, which is why it's so important to repot when new roots are growing. If I don't repot this now, with these new roots coming, I've got to leave it till the next set come. That could be a year away. So now is the time to make the decision, is that media going to last another year without going sour and stale? Which will take out a lot of those older roots and start being aggressive against the new ones and getting their tips to go brown. Now in theory that ought to get done now, I think. So what do? We go and check our notes and find out when it was last repotted. And that will tell me whether I really ought to get on with it or can it go another year, bearing in mind it has got moss in the pot. So it'll probably end up getting done now. Or soon. Soon. Lives up there. Oh. Right, where do we get to? Next big one. This is Castanier, and this is the one of the set of Oncidiums that got hit by the too much light. And now it's obvious, because if you put the older leaves next to the latest ones, this is the colour they should be. This is not the colour they should be. But when they change from that to that over a period of 3 or 4 months, you just don't see it happening until somebody looking in cold says, "You've got too much light on your Oncidiums, Roger." Oh, okay. And he was right. But we've got a reasonable root system on that. Only a single new growth. That will bloom, but it'll take quite a while, and it does grow a rather enormous spike when it gets going. I think the largest spike I had on it was about well over 2/3 of a metre and had about 50 blooms on it. The last spike I had wasn't as good as that, but let's see what this one can do. Right, what else lives up there then? We've got our recently acquired Hibiki, which I haven't taken much notice of lately, but what I'm aware of is that I don't like what it's potted in. It's in that cocoa fibre stuff, which I've just about got my head round now, so I can put up with it for a reasonable amount of time and not leave things soggy and wet all the time or bone dry, because that stuff seems to go from soggy to bone dry in about half an hour. But what I have noticed today is I've got new growths coming out all over this plant. You're not going to see all of them because they'll be buried in the shadows. But just looking in through there, I can see 1, 2, the larger one here, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. There's over a dozen new growths on that. With new growths should come new roots in the not too distant future. That needs repotting soon if I'm going to do it, or mounting, or whatever I'm going to do with it. I need to do it relatively soon because it's coming back into serious vegetative growth with that number of new growths. So we'll deal with that. It's still got its single bloom on it up the top there. They do last a long time, the blooms. I mean, it's got a lot going for it. This dendrobium, I must admit. Right, so that goes up there, behind the other plant, so it doesn't get too much light. And then, not doing very well, that just lives up on that shelf because it's supposed to like a lot of light, is my Dimorphorchis lowii, which is just not growing very well. It's not dying, Hasn't grown a new leaf for a while. It has got some roots, and there was an active root tip not long ago, but it doesn't like the cold in the winter, so but not dead yet. But it's you know, I mean, this is 15 years away from blooming size, if not more, in my environment, because it's too cold in here in the winter. Doesn't like it. Bandaceous type, monopodial. And in its younger years it prefers to have its roots reasonably hydrated, and eventually it goes into Vanda status and likes actually lots of air around its roots, preferably virtually bare rooted, and then constantly moistened, you know, as though it was raining a couple of times a day, that sort of thing. So it's not an easy one to look after, that. But it was a present, we do what we can. And the last one that lives up there is actually in a holy clay pot, but it was recently put in it, and as a consequence the bark it's in dries in a day. So this one gets watered almost every time I come out here to water something, just to try and keep it hydrated until that bark settles down a bit. But yeah, this is one of my new dendrobiums, a Latoria type, to replace some of the others that may or may not recover. Yeah, not bad. It was certainly a good purchase at the price I paid for it. And the buds that didn't blast due to the repot are opening, so that they've managed to carry on and open up okay, or they're opening. They're not fully open yet. The blooms that are fully open look like that. Very, very attractive blooms. There we go. Oh. That up there. Now it's getting warm out here again without the fans on, so we need to do something about that and get the fans on. This bush up here is, if it wasn't going to be such a spectacle soon, it would be driving me up the wall. It's the trouble this time of year. When they're just plants, you can knock them around, but when they're plants with spikes and buds, you can't. You will knock buds off quite easily. So I'm having to be careful at the moment, but we're getting there. What's today? Saturday. We've nearly won the battle with the offending laptop. It took an awful long time. Lots of pieces of software installed, probably hardly ever used, so far too much clutter on it. And a lot of them have been installed with default settings, rather than thinking about what you're doing. And there was conflicts. So one piece of software preset Windows to work like this, and then others came in and changed it, so that bit didn't work very well, and then that bit started to complain, and this bit was set in the startup routine to automatically come up when the computer turns on, and it wouldn't load because something had gone wrong. A lot of conflicts on there, took a lot of working out. Process of elimination. Right, if that's causing me a problem, get it out, stop it loading, stop it running, get it out of the way. We decide whether we want to keep it later. And I eventually got it to be able to run the Windows updates, which was what it was trying to do that while other things were getting in the way. And with only 3 gig of memory, it was failing miserably. It was just locking up. So we finally got it to run the updates today, 121 of them. Took most of the morning. And that was the important ones. It's just finished the optional ones. And I think it's now in what I would call a stable state. But Joe and Charlie and little Tegan, who's hoping to do her homework on it, have just popped round to leave their hard drive with me, because they had about 140 gigabytes worth of videos and photos on that laptop that had to come off. It just too cluttered, too full. So I took them all off onto my hard drive, and then they brought their hard drive down and round, and I've transferred them back over there. So they're now not on the laptop, but not lost, saved away nicely. I said, when you get round to viewing your 49,500 files, let me know what they're all about, won't you? That's the trouble. When you've got something like an iPhone, you go for a day out, you can take 100 shots, can't you? And you just stick them in a folder, put them away. Another 100 the next day. Fortnight's holiday in Ibiza. Click, 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 click. It builds up. Especially if you think, oh, the kids are playing in the pool. Video clip. It's the equivalent of about 50 photos, because it's a video. So anyway, I've got it stable now that when it loads, when you turn it on, it loads clean and doesn't keep coming up with pop-ups. Can I do this? Can I do that? This failed, this won't work because that didn't work, and so I've got it stable now, and I hope to have everything. Oh, and Charlie said if there's any stuff on there that looks like it was only loaded for a one-off, he said if there's anything on there that seems a bit iffy, just get rid of it. All we want to use it for is for Tegan to do her homework. So I will now that I've got it stable, declutter it. I love deleting stuff. Uninstall now. yeah, but no, do it now. So we'll declutter it now and leave it as good as it's going to get, basically. So, and they bought me a bottle of wine round for doing it, which I'm now going to go and take the top off and give it a go, basically, because it's late o'clock. Even though it looks bright out here, that's because the sun's dipping down directly behind me. So yeah, that was part 2 of the start of season updates, and that knocked out a few. I reckon another 1 part will do all the rest of the pots. The Holy Clay pots I'm not going to do because they're nearly all Cattleyas, and we've already looked at those. Yeah, so I'm not going to bother with those again, which will leave the rest of the pots. That'll be part 3 probably, and the shady lot, that little lot down there, but there's not so many of them nowadays. We've done the mounts over here. We will still have a lot of mounts to do though. We've still got, you know, everything that's not behind me now that's over here. So there's still, you know, there'll be another couple of parts. But I reckon 4 or 5 parts should see us through, with gaps in between, obviously. I don't want to do them one after the other. And I will see you tomorrow for the Sunday chat, which at the moment I have no idea what that's going to be about. I know. Let's mess everybody up and do politics and religion. Yeah, that'll be the day. Not on my channel. See you next time. Bye for now.